All right, we are live on the 23rd of May 2024. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us here on Coin Bureau Clips for another edition of NFA Live. I am joined by my two compadres, Ben from Into the Cryptoverse. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
And Rob from Digital Asset News. Welcome, Rob.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, guys. Good to see you again. It has been well. Before we get into it, everyone watching, if you don't already follow Rob and Ben, then I highly recommend that you do so. Links are in the description. Yeah, if you are new to NFA at all, we do this sort of on a fairly weekly basis. Talk about all the things that have been going on in the crypto market, the big stories of the day, and of course the big stories at the moment. I should come with a caveat at the top of this stream. They are sort of generally kind of political in nature, as well as being related to crypto. So, a trigger warning for anyone watching. We will be discussing politics, US politics, up to a point today. So just bear that in mind, because there's been some big news coming out of Washington, D.C. in the last couple of days. And really, as I said on a live stream yesterday with Nick, it does feel like we are kind of living through some fairly seismic, important times for crypto at the moment. So I think there's a lot to talk about. This could be one of those weeks we look back on in the future and go, wow, that was pretty big. So we will be talking. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about ETFs and our views on where we see the market going now. After things have kind of changed a bit over the last couple of days. But first, let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin dominance, because Ben, obviously, this is something that you've talked about a lot, and like this has changed obviously with this news, with this rather unexpected news over the last couple of days. So I just thought it would be good to start just to get your thoughts on where we are with that now, and kind of what you think you see sort of going forward for Bitcoin dominance, obviously in this era of now suddenly this massive pivot to there might very well be an Ethereum ETF maybe later on today.
Yeah, I think the Ethereum ETF kind of took us all by surprise. We've talked about it for months on here, and it always seemed like there was not really a great chance of it happening. And now that it's happened, it's it's led to a definitely a renewed interest on Ethereum. And I was sort of saying before, right, like live by dominance, die by it as well. But I wanted to share a chart really quick, and maybe we'll take it from there. It's like just last week, I was celebrating 60% dominance, excluding stables, and now it's all the way back below 58% in only 1 week. I would say this, sort of like a strong opinion loosely held. I still think there is a good chance it will ultimately go higher later this year. But if it's going to hold now, I feel like this has got to be the spot that it's going to hold, because, this is essentially we're back to this line that we've been holding, this uptrend we've been holding since 2022 began. So 2.5 years. It's been a long time coming. And it's also to the bull market support band, right? The 20-week SMA and 21-week EMA. So if it's going to hold, I imagine that it's got to hold here. If it doesn't hold here, then that would probably set us off into a different path for the summer. I would say there's two things that I would look at, and that's sort of like these alt Bitcoin pairs. And you can see right now they're still struggling. Like, it's funny because we saw the ETH ETF come through, but in reality, Bitcoin dominance, if you exclude ETH, which is coping, but if you exclude ETH, it's actually it's not down nearly as much. Like if I were to pull it up, so Bitcoin divided by crypto cap total minus ETH, you can see that dominance is still way up here. Like it hasn't really made that big of a move to the downside. So this drawback has mainly just been ETH Bitcoin. Alt Bitcoin pairs are still way down here. They haven't really seen that same move. And now I think the question is well, are they going to follow it up or are they not? If you look at sort of the comparison with this over here, it would suggest there could be a larger downturn coming this summer. But, just to sort of keep my bases covered, here's a wick that we had in May of the halving year of 2020. And you can see that they had a little bit more of a bounce before then going lower in Q4 of that year. And that occurred, of course, on that Bitcoin rally that came in Q4 of the halving year in 2020. So again, I think in the short term, if it's going to hold, this has got to be the spot that it's going to do it. And there's also some other things that I've looked at before as well. It's not just Bitcoin dominance. It's what I've called blue chip dominance, which is Bitcoin plus ETH dominance. And that one is near this breakout point as well of 73%. We've been watching that for a while. And so in the short term, ETH Bitcoin, if I pull up the ETH Bitcoin chart, it's had a pretty big move to the upside, right? And I still don't know if it's just the May 2019 move or if it's going to turn into something more. So again, I'll have to see what happens here with the spot ETF. But if it just fades back to the downside like it did in 2019, then Bitcoin dominance should hold support at this level. If it's more of like a summer 2020, then it calls this support level into question. So look, guys, I've been riding the dominance train for 2.5 years now, and it's been a pretty good train so far to be on. I think there is one case to be made that the ETH ETF, it certainly has led to a surge in ETH Bitcoin. We haven't seen it with all alt Bitcoin pairs. I almost wonder if one of the bigger stories here is now the devaluation of alts against ETH as well. If you think about over the last year, a lot of altcoins have gone up against ETH, right? And I was actually talking about this a lot on my channel last week, the Sol ETH pair. I feel like a lot of people were converting their ETH to Sol up here at these range highs, when in reality, they probably should have been doing the opposite. I feel like a lot of times when these alt ETH valuations get stretched, people want to convert their ETH for all these altcoins that are doing well, but oftentimes those decisions are made sort of at these range highs and then they get rejected. So, the spot ETF for ETH could be a turning point for alt ETH pairs. And that's no shade thrown at Solana. Solana's done an absolutely incredible job here over the last couple of years. It's just that, hey, sometimes the market has to cool off a little bit. And I wonder if we're starting to see that happen now.
Yeah. And I guess, obviously there's a lot of excitement now around a spot ETH ETF being approved. As I said earlier, it could come today. Today right. is the sort of final decision day. Right. So, in the next few hours, we could well see that decision, which would obviously, I think, send ETH higher, most likely. But I guess the big question is, and this is related to Bitcoin dominance as much as anything else, is what the demand for that spot ETH ETF or those spot ETFs is like if they do get approved. Because again, this is something Nick and I were speculating on yesterday. Obviously, there was this huge pent-up demand for the spot Bitcoin ETFs that really sort of flooded in and took the whole market higher, especially Bitcoin, of course. But I don't think there's quite. I don't think people are anticipating anything like the sort of demand for the spot ETH ETFs. So, if that demand turned out to be lackluster, then we could see Bitcoin dominance ticking back up again.
Right?
Would you say?
Yeah. That's the thing. That's why I said I think the bigger story here might be all ETH pairs, because Bitcoin still has an ETF, right? It's not like Bitcoin doesn't. So just because ETH gets one doesn't mean that the ETH Bitcoin valuation is immediately going to go to the moon. But I think the more obvious thing would be that all ETH pairs could start to bleed. But then it also sort of raises the question in my mind, like the natural question that I immediately come to after, if the spot ETF for ETH, I feel like, in my mind, it's already been approved, but I guess there's no, it's not a sure thing just yet. If it is approved, then what's the legal basis for not approving one for, Solana or Avalanche or Polkadot or Cardano, or, basically you go down the whole list and you're like, well, if you're going to approve this one, how can you not approve all these over here? And so, I mean, in the short term, I think it could lead to sort of the devaluation of some alt ETH pairs, but it might open the door for ETFs for a lot of other cryptocurrencies down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could see people. So, I think the crypto market is so forward looking that the animal spirits could sort of take over, and we could see actually the big beneficiaries of an spot ETF approval could be things like Solana. As people start speculating on the possibility of that ETF, we always seem to be looking, several weeks, months, even years ahead some of the time. So, yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens today, right? Because isn't today the deadline?
Today is the deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so that's why, when I look at Bitcoin dominance, it's right here at the 20-week SMA. I mean, that's why I said before, if it's going to hold, this is where it's going to hold. And if it's not, I imagine we should know relatively shortly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk a bit more then about the spot Ethereum ETFs, or not so much the ETFs themselves, because as you said, Ben, like we've talked about them a lot over the last few weeks and even months, and before that it was spot Bitcoin ETFs. But I guess what's a little bit different this time around is that all of a sudden the spot Ethereum ETFs seem to have become, or the issue around them seems to have become somewhat politicized. And now all of a sudden the speculation is that the SEC is being leaned on by the current administration that seems to have been kind of spooked in a way to suddenly pivoting towards being more pro crypto. So, and all of a sudden, crypto seems to be, or certainly a lot of people in the community are saying that crypto itself is now an election issue. That both parties are going to have to pay attention to as we head towards November. Do you guys agree with that? Do you guys think the issue has become politicized in itself? Rob, do you want to lead us off on this one?
Sure. First of all, before I get into that, I want to say congratulations to everybody for sticking around, because what Ben was talking about, Bitcoin dominance, and we got into Ethereum, we got into altcoins, but just remember that if you're investing in other assets or other equities, like how's the S&P 500 doing for the year? I think it's up by like 10%, which is great, fantastic. Maybe you picked a good stock here. Maybe you got into NVIDIA, congratulations. But even if you just would have got into just straight up Bitcoin, I mean, you're way up this year. And if you're into like some other riskier stuff like myself, you're really up, or sometimes you're really down, depending on what kind of crazy ass meme coin you got into. But I mean, really, it just comes down to, if you're still here, congratulations, because there was a lot of noise that came through as far as on the political side and how negative it was. We saw the Elizabeth Warrens, we saw the Gary Genslers as they come out and publicly say like, look, we need to do it this way, and crypto is bad and we have to be on it. And now all of a sudden everything just pivots. And how did this happen? Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about the ETF, some people will say, well, there was an Ethereum futures already approved, so there's no way they couldn't. However, and I'm not the one to give you advice on like why the ETF was approved. I've been wrong twice, so far. But I will just say it's amazing how things moved so quickly. And I know people aren't going to want to hear this, but I'm going to say it, which is this: nothing really seemed to really move on the political side until Donald Trump came in and said, look, I agree with you, and I think crypto is an issue. Now, if you believe that Donald Trump is a liar and a politician, you're probably right. Because we're all liars. Let's be honest, we're human, but politicians are, of course, the bigger liars. But nothing really changed until that happened. It was just like 2 weeks ago. And this was, first it was at Mar-a-Lago when he did some kind of press conference. And then all of a sudden it was some other statements on MSNBC, on some other shows. And then all of a sudden it was the exact same ad that Elizabeth Warren had, which she said, I have an anti-crypto army. And then over here, Trump comes out and says, I have a crypto army that I'm going to bring into the White House. And it was just side by side. Now, whether you want to say it's politics or not, it's obviously politics. And I can kind of see how things have moved in a direction in just a very short time. But I mean, it's good for us. Some people will say that I don't want to vote for Trump. I don't want to vote for Biden. I'm going to vote for RFK Jr. Vote whoever you want to. All I'm saying is that all this jockeying and the positions, I think, has really politicized and moving the needle in a certain direction. And that's good for us. Now, whoever gets nominated or whoever goes through and actually gets the presidency is up in the air. I said it before, RFK Jr. is probably the best candidate for crypto and currencies and digital assets. You can't dispute that, I don't think. Donald Trump would be second, and Joe Biden is probably the worst. And that's where we're at. So next thing we'll talk about is religion, and we'll get into that later. Just kidding.
We'll just tick off the hot button issues as we go and see if we can offend everyone in the comments by the end of the stream, I guess.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah, that's the plan. We'll do our best. But I mean, because I guess Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, ditto. But I mean, when it comes to the election in November, as I understand politics in the US to be, there are red states and there are blue states, and you aren't really changing most of those. So the election itself comes down to the purple states, the swing states, that could go either way, and that is the battleground. So because I think there's been a lot of talk over the last few days, like is crypto, are people going to vote on a single issue? Is crypto a sort of single issue thing now? Because I think, obviously, for people like us who are sort of embedded in the industry, you'd imagine it would be. But do you think there are enough people out there in the US who, and particularly in these swing states, who perhaps feel strongly enough about crypto to make it a single issue thing, when you consider how many other pressures people are under, cost of living, jobs, employment, crumbling infrastructure, things like that. The list can go on and on. So, do you guys think, from your view of the industry, there, do you think crypto could be enough of an issue now to perhaps sway the election in enough states? I know that's a very big, that's a very broad question.
I mean, I think there definitely is a crypto wave, right? I've said this before. I think that politicians that don't embrace crypto probably won't be politicians for very much longer, because I think eventually they're going to be voted out. I think a lot of times we have we struggle to sort of adopt new technologies as we get older. And I'm sure like all of us, when we're in our 70s or 80s, there's going to be something new and we're going to be like, damn kids, get off my lawn. But my thinking is that it's really hard for a lot of people sort of embrace crypto because it's so foreign to them. There's a lot of politicians who are a lot older and they just don't really see the value of it. And so they just turn it away. But I think the base that has crypto is growing. And I mean, I don't really know if it's enough to move the needle just yet. It might be. But I think that, every election we have from here on out, like, it's going to be an increasingly important topic, right? Because I mean, if you look at crypto adoption over the last decade, it's only gone up, right? It's never really decreased. It's basically just gone higher. So I do think that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever party you're in, I think it would be smart to embrace the cryptocurrency industry and say, I mean, like, I'm not saying you shouldn't have regulations, but just tell us what they are, so that the cryptocurrency market, the people, the actors here can abide by those regulations. I think that's all we really want, right? We're not asking necessarily to be treated any differently. I think we just want to know what the rules are so that we can play by those rules, rather than play by no rules and then be told later, we're doing everything wrong. So yeah, I think it is possible that it could move the needle in some places to some degree. When you're talking about like the financial markets, people are really vested in them, right? If they're long on a certain asset, or if they're bearish on a certain asset. I mean, to some degree, I feel like when I talk about, Bitcoin dominance and alt Bitcoin pairs and alt ETH pairs, sometimes I almost feel like a politician because I'm trying to like phrase things in a way that doesn't piss everyone off, right? Like I want to make sure that, you know, the people that, you know, are following Bitcoin dominance, that they're like, all right, that makes sense. But if you're also really bullish on the ETH Bitcoin pair, I don't want to give you the impression it's going to zero because I don't think that's true either. So it's kind of like you have to say the right thing to sort of appeal to as many people as possible sometimes, but you also want to tell the truth. So it's a difficult spot to be in, I think. But yeah, and I mean, I think that crypto will play. I think it will play an important role in this election. I don't know if it's going to be enough to move the needle, but it very well could in some of the swing states. Like maybe that's where it makes the difference. And the sort of the swing states that are you know, prone to switching from red to blue and back again from one election to another.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess because it comes down to those swing states, I guess it can, you know, it can just come down to a few votes. I mean, that's what a few thousand votes or whatever, because that's, if I remember rightly, that's what happened with George W. Bush in, was it 2000 or something like that, against Al Gore. You know, it came down to a few thousand votes in Florida. So I don't think it's inconceivable that perhaps it could come down to a few thousand votes, and maybe, you know, maybe crypto would be enough of an issue to swing it then. Rob, do you feel, because obviously one of the loudest voices in government against crypto has been Elizabeth Warren, who's obviously a progressive Democrat. She must be in a fairly kind of odd position, because crypto is very, you know, as you were alluding to earlier, Ben, like, you know, generally the sort of older generations aren't so open to it. So crypto is, I think you could argue, probably a younger person's thing. So progressive Democrats, who generally, I think, try to appeal to that younger voter, they must be caught in a bit of an odd situation, because on the one hand they want to appeal to younger voters, but on the other hand they seem to be, you know, really, really opposed to this thing that younger voters seem to be interested in.
Yeah, with Elizabeth Warren, I don't know what happened, because in her early career, she was a big crusader against the big banks, and she would go against them, and she would rally, and she would try to get her bills passed, which was kind of unsuccessful. But then as time has gone on, then all of a sudden she became like more friendly with Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan and the things that are going on in this. And of course, with crypto and digital assets, especially Bitcoin, you know, you're trying to get away from the big banks, and she's gone towards the regulation and the just depression of crypto. And I don't know where she went wrong, where she got the misinformation, but she's here, and like she's kind of like stuck with it now at this point. It's kind of hard to go on reversal. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. And as far as like this being a political issue, before these last two bills, I forgot which one it was, the House Bill 109 and then this latest one, FIT 21, I wouldn't say it was more of a political issue, because it seemed like crypto wasn't really a big thing or a big push. But the bill before FIT 21, you saw how it passed the House, which I kind of thought it would, because there's more Republicans than Democrats, and Republicans are more pro-crypto. But then when it went to the Senate, I thought it would get killed. But then the majority leader, Chuck Schumer, came out, and he's a Democrat, and is like, you know what, vote your conscience, and we're going to see if this actually gets passed. And he actually, I believe, voted for it. Now you fast forward to FIT 21, and it wasn't just a small amount. It was 76 Democrats, 76 or 73 Democrats that voted positively for this bill, on top of the 200 or so Republicans. And that pushed it forward. And of course, everybody's favorite Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, also voted for it. So, you know, if Nancy's for it, then it's good for her bank account. So like when I see this, I'm like, okay, there was this first bill, you know, it kind of squeaked by. We'll see if the president vetoes it like he said he was going to. This last bill, FIT 21, gets through the House. Now we have to go through the Senate. And if that flies through goes through with flying colors, the president has already said, I'm not going to veto this one. I want to work with Congress, but we disapprove of the language of what's going on. So we'll see what works out. So I see a big shift in a very short amount of time. And that's why it's kind of important everybody kind of stays up to date with what's happening. So I see it. We'll see if it continues. Anybody's guess, not for sure.
Yeah. We all want to know what cryptos Nancy Pelosi is holding. Is she long ETH? Is she ETH Bitcoin? Is she deep into meme coins? And Rob, you make a good point actually, because someone in the office was saying this earlier as well. Like this is a Fit 21 is a bill, not a resolution. So it now goes, excuse me, it now goes to the Senate. And at this stage, is this not the time when all sorts of crazy stuff starts to get tacked onto it? Haven't we seen this with previous bills? You know, they try to tack on some kind of military spending thing, or people try to tack on something that, you know, benefits their particular state or something like that. There's a whole load of kind of horse trading goes on. So, I mean, I think I'm right in saying, like, although this is a huge step, it getting through the House, there is still kind of a long way to go before it gets through the Senate, and that could take quite a long time, if I'm not mistaken.
It could take it, and it's also a reason why, like, a dollar cost average on these cryptos and these digital assets, and even if you were into like equities and things like that, and because you never know what's going on behind the scenes. We'll never know what's happening with these crypto projects behind the doors and the things they're doing, and we're never going to know what's going to happen behind the doors of the Senate as I start to make these backroom deals. We'll never know. And then when it comes out, you're like, oh, well, that's what they agreed to. Now, there's always going to be some people who are like, I'm not going to approve your spending of this nonsense that you're doing, and I'm not going to vote for it. But they'll make deals behind the scenes, and they'll vote for something else, and we won't know. So that's why, like, all these things that we talk about, it's great to speculate, but for us to know like the whole story, no idea. And I'll give you a prime example. FTX, you know, the things that were going on behind the scenes with that and Gary Gensler, nobody knows. And I can't believe that guy's still in office. But this is why we stick around for the long haul. Time in the market, I think, is sometimes greater than timing the market.
Yeah. Very wise words. That sort of leads on to the other thing that I wanted to talk about. I don't want to dwell on. I know we've talked a lot about this. Before we do talk about this, though, to anyone watching, if you guys have any questions for Rob and Ben and dare say even myself, then please do put them in the comments, and we'll come to them shortly. We'll answer them sort of once we've talked through this week's talking points. So yeah, I just wanted to get both of your thoughts just to touch on this one more time. You know, this is a big old 180 on the ETFs from the SEC, it would seem. So I just pure speculation. Do you guys think Gary had a change of heart? Rob, you were talking about FTX. You know, do you think perhaps this is a hangover? Because obviously, I think Democrats in particular, not Democrats solely, but Democrats in particular, I think were very much burned by their association with Sam Bankman-Fried in many cases. So is this, you know, do you feel that there is political pressure now on the SEC to maybe approve these things? Is the call coming in from the White House? And what does this mean for Elizabeth Warren's anti-crypto army? Have they been scattered to the four winds before they've even had a chance to mobilize? Ben, do you have any thoughts on this?
I'm guessing there's some pressure, because I mean, he's been pretty clear about kind of where he stands, I feel like, for a long time. So yeah, I would guess that he got a call or just felt the pressure from a lot of different people, and that's where the change of heart has come from. I don't really know where it exactly came from, if it was pressure from other people in the SEC or politicians, or maybe even some of the institutions that are filing the spot ETFs themselves. I don't really know where it's coming from specifically, but yeah, certainly it was a complete 180. Because I don't even think they were even talking to those people that had issued the spot ETFs or that had applied for them. They hadn't even been responding to them at all, and then now all of a sudden they're going back and forth with them, which is kind of the activity you would expect to see before one is actually approved. The other thing I meant to say this earlier, because Rob said, if you're still here, congratulations. I pulled up the social risk. It's lower now than it has been since 2018, right? Sure. Like, that shows you just how little social interest there is with crypto, which is insane considering that, you know, you have ETH trading at $4,000, you have Bitcoin trading at $70,000. Basically, I mean, Bitcoin's essentially at near the highest price it's ever been. Ethereum is not that far off the highest price it's ever been. And where is everyone, you know? And I still think that, like, there's this aspect of there's a group of us, like, hardcore sort of believers, right, that believe in the future of the industry. And then there's like, well, where is everyone else? And, you know, maybe where they are is just they're, you know, I think a lot of people don't really feel that great about things in the economy because, you know, inflation's still so high and you don't have as much money to go, you know, put it in risky assets. And if you're not doing that, then, you know, if the prices go up, you're not really that interested because you couldn't afford to buy it anyways, because, you know, you're basically strapped for, you know, for just making ends meet. So I just think it's a really interesting thing because normally when you hit new all-time highs, social interest is going insane, right? This time, I mean, I just keep looking around and I'm like, well, maybe it's just my channel because I'm just boring, you know, Bitcoin. And then I go look at all the other channels and I'm like, no, it's actually everywhere. That's really an interesting thing. And I think that's kind of why I'm sort of on the fence about going to the first question about how big of an impact it'll make in this election. I mean, there's a lot of us that really care, but I'm also thinking, like, where is everyone, you know? And that's something I continue to sort of struggle with on sort of an ongoing basis. Like, what's it actually going to take to bring people back? Because new all-time highs haven't brought them back. Maybe it's just the Fed that has to bring them back, but we'll see.
Maybe it's just one point. Maybe it's just that we never had ETFs before. So maybe the people that are doing the education, whether that be the Booth Bay hedge fund, Millennium Management, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, all these different people, Pine Ridge Advisors, maybe these are the guys that, and that's a lot of money with this ETF. Right. Maybe this is the education they're getting. And they're like, we don't even pay attention to YouTube because we're going to put our money into it and we're going to walk away. Did it go up? Oh, it went up. Great. I don't really know why it went up. I mean, they kind of told me it was going to happen. Now here we are. So maybe it's just like, I mean, of course, Bitcoin's the biggest. Maybe in that regard, they're just kind of letting it ride. And then, of course, all the rest of the people that are out there like, I'm just going to get into meme coins. Who knows what it is? But I think at some point, you know, meme coins are great, but at some point we're gonna have to really start to think about pivoting to get into those projects that actually do something. I know people when meme coins hate me when I say that, but at some point you gotta pivot.
Watch out, Rob. It's a slippery slope from going full Bitcoin dominance. So
exactly. Well, Pepe coin dominance is at 0.15, I think.
I was like, there's no way it's at 1%.
Yeah, 0.15. I did it. I used your workbench actually to show people like this is Pepe coin dominance and this is how it goes. See, using things all the time. Great website.
This is going to be the story of H2. Pepe dominance. Forget Bitcoin dominance. Forget what's happening on Capitol Hill. Pepe dominance is going to be what we're all talking about in H2. You heard it here first. Yeah, I agree with you, Ben, because I mean, like I said, I think I said last week, I was back in the UK a couple of weeks ago. I saw some friends who I hadn't seen for a long time, and a few of them had been, were into crypto in the last cycle, and they asked me like, oh, how's crypto doing? And I sort of took that as a bad sign because I was like, well, you tell me. Yeah, I said, well, obviously the ETFs have kind of changed things, and both of them sort of looked at me as like, what's an ETF? It was like, okay, we have a very long way to go. It's so big because it's not just that people are waiting on the side, or certainly anecdotally, this is what I've been seeing. It's not just that people are waiting on the sidelines, sort of like, well, let's see what happens with prices and regulation and stuff. It's that people seem to have completely disengaged with it, apart from a hardcore of people who are, paying attention and watching this live stream. But yeah, I think and I think that's a big difference to make. I think there is a big difference between people just sort of being passive watchers of the industry and actually not paying any attention at all. And I think maybe that's the step that we need to take. People first need to start paying attention before we can expect them to, start investing and start getting into the market.
Yep. Well said. Well said.
I think we still have a long way to go. Anyhow, before we take any questions and comments from the audience, I just want to ask you guys, in light of everything that's happened this week, all the sort of political stuff, everything around the Ethereum ETFs, have any of these developments changed either of your views on the market for the next, I know it says 2 months there, but I think that's a little bit of a short time frame. But for the next few months, really, has your outlook changed at all over what's happened in the last few days? Ben, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I think it depends on if dominance holds. If it holds support at kind of the same spot it always has, then not really. I feel like the Bitcoin will show relative strength compared to everything else. But if it fails to hold and we go, I'm trying to think of like what would be sort of the level that would be like, all right, well, if you go below that, clearly the structure is broken. I mean, I feel like if you see dominance, especially kind of in the lower 50s, like so the bull mark support band is basically around 53 to 54%. So I'd say as long as it holds above that, I don't think anything has changed. But if it fails there and there's just some crazy move by the ETH Bitcoin pair, then I would say, yeah, definitely it would sort of change my view on the summer. It's sort of, again, it's a strong opinion about Bitcoin dominance, but I also, it's loosely held, right? Like sort of loosely held, but it's, show me that it doesn't hold support, and then I would absolutely be willing to say, all right, yeah, like it's going to do something else this summer than what I thought. So I think really the funny thing is like we might have the answer to that question like later today, right? Which is funny because like maybe by next week it'll be a better time to sort of address it. I think right now I'm just waiting to see like what is the reaction going to be, when the announcement happens, whether it's approved or. And again, I actually hope. I hope it's approved. I don't really think there's a great reason to not approve it. I just want to know what the reaction is going to be, and then based on that reaction, I think you could, say more about altcoins and how they're going to behave with respect to Bitcoin and ETH. But so far, I think the status quo remains unchanged. But if we break support on Bitcoin dominance, then it would change things for the summer for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Rob, what about you? Has your outlook changed at all?
I've changed. Yeah, well, one thing has changed. It seems like Saturday or summers are kind of like this lull time, right? Sell in May and go away. And really nothing really goes on. And I think you said this last week, Guy, you talked about how this time is different. We've never hit an all-time high before the halving. And of course we did that. And now this summer has been like fireworks, and it just kind of popped off. Sell in May, I think May 1st, Bitcoin was below 60K. Ethereum, I don't know where it was. But and of course alts were wherever they were as well. But it seems like now everything kind of just has been popping. And this is a very odd time, but ETFs will do it. I find it, nothing's really changed for me in essence of what I'm going to do. I still dollar cost average some every day, some every week, and I wait for the long haul. I'm waiting for certain indicators to hit. And then of course I'll sell like 80% of my crypto, not all of it. And even like Bitcoin, there'll be like a provision there. But for me, I just kind of look at this and go, well, this is great timing. And I was kind of concerned about, honestly, we are some of the 4-year cycles about how things just kind of pop off at some point. I'm like, what is going to be the catalyst this time? And now it seems like it's here. It's crazy. The politicians are going to be some of the catalysts that are going to really drive us into this parabolic bull run because of what they're talking about, what they're doing, and these ETFs being approved. Crazy. But here we are. That's why we're here. Yeah.
I think you're right, Rob. There does seem to be, because we addressed at the beginning of this month, a few streams ago, the notion of sell in May and go away. And it does, it seems to have sort of peaked and troughed a little bit over the month, because I think last week or before there was this sudden surge related to interest in the ETFs, before the Bloomberg analysts sort of switched from 25% to 75%. I was looking at the timeline on Twitter and, the market itself, and it seemed really sort of moribund all of a sudden. I always kind of judge it by the sentiment on Twitter, how shitty people are being to each other. And I really got the sense that last week or whenever it was, people were really going for each other.
Oh yeah.
Especially with the sort of rival projects now, it just seems to get more and more bad-tempered as we go along. Everyone, and so many people giving Ethereum a kicking, and then of course, the Ethereum crowd are able to sort of come back swinging with this ETF. So, yeah, I think we are in a sort of odd period, I think. But you pulled me up on said maybe this time is different. Obviously, that those are the most dangerous words in investing, aren't they? Because this time rarely is different. But let's see. Okay, let's just then take a few minutes just to see what people have been asking. Here's a question from Not Meme. A question for the group: wouldn't a Doge ETF be more likely than a Sol ETF, as Doge has already been determined not to be a security? Proof of work, and Sol, well. Has Doge? I mean, obviously Doge is proof of work. Has Doge actually been determined not to be a security? Has anyone from the CFTC or elsewhere come out and said that? Maybe they have, and I've forgotten. But
I think one thing that I was reading, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the ETH ETF is that they're not going to stake the ETH. Is that right?
They withdrew that part.
Yeah. So, I mean, I honestly don't know what's been said. I know there's different like regulatory bodies that have called some. I mean, you have like Gary Gensler, who's basically saying everything's a security, or at least that's what he has said before, except for maybe Bitcoin. And then you have these other regulatory bodies that say, no, they're not securities. I don't really know. I mean, it just feels like they just keep changing what is their definition and what is not. I don't, Rob, do you know like what they've actually declared before?
No, well, I mean, we all know that Ripple and XRP went through the whole process. I'm not for sure if they say, total clarity there. I know that I think it was Polkadot. It got a letter of no contest. I don't think they've actually said like, hey, this is not a security. But I know Bitcoin's probably, is the most one. But that I don't know if that would indicate that all proof of works would be. And again, I'm not the ETF expert, been wrong twice so far. So like with this one's like with Dogecoin, I mean, it would make sense, but then that would be like a lot of the proof of works. Really, it comes down to who's going to file for it. Is BlackRock going to be like, you know what's next, baby? Doge. Maybe they're like, I don't know if we got that much demand for it, except for Rob and Dogecoin Millionaire. But besides those guys, maybe we'll do something else.
Can you just imagine the reaction of like some politicians if like they're pushing like a meme coin ETF through?
Can you imagine my bags though, Ben? That's the real question. Can you imagine my bags with Dogecoin? Oh my God.
I guess
I think the launch of the Dogecoin ETF will pump Rob's bags so much that will also be the time that we see the launch of Rob's bid for president. So watch out for that.
No, thank you. Yeah.
If you think it's different this time, wait till you get the Doge ETF and Rob goes on the campaign trail. Simon J. Stewart in a absolute blizzard of abbreviations. NFA ETF end of year. We are working on it, Simon. We're working on it. The SEC are obviously focused on Ethereum at the moment, but we are in discussions to launch an NFA ETF. We're fairly confident now that it will get approved, but maybe not before the Doge one.
At least the meme.
Yeah. Okay. Justin Russell has a good point here. Not so much a question, but I think this is pertinent to what we were talking about earlier. I think crypto is a factor, but not enough to override more important factors. So I don't think it's going to swing more than like a few thousand votes across the entire country, which I think is a perfectly reasonable stance to take. But again, like I suppose if the race is that tight, then a few thousand votes could swing it. I mean, maybe I'm just clutching at straws here.
No. You guys both said it. You guys both said it right. It's down to a handful of states, and if there's one position that some people may find favorable, and they weigh everything, because like I know there was one guy that said, I hate Trump, I hate Republicans, I hate everything they stand for, but I have so much money in crypto right now, it would be the dumbest thing of all time to vote for Biden. And then of course other people are like, I don't care what Trump says, I don't care what RFK Jr. says, I'm voting for Biden. It just depends. But like, again, if everything counts, then why not? I think that's why there was the pivot so far.
Yeah, very true. Okay, another question from Crypto Womanist, interesting name. How do you all imagine meme coins performing during the blow off top? Holding any long term or just trading?
Oh, that's a Ben question.
Do we think?
Oh no, that is 100% a wrong question.
So let's see. Okay, I mean, Ben, if you don't want to disclose your monstrous meme coin bag, that's fine. I'll take this one. So as far as like meme coins performing, there's going to be about 99.9% rug pulls, and you'll lose a ton of your money. That's what I personally think. But there's some meme coins that'll stick around. Dogecoin was the first one. Do you know? You've realized how long Dogecoin's been around? Since 2014. And it's been like the top 35 since 2014. I did like a whole video on this one, which is amazing to me. I think the next one is Bonk. And of course, I'm saying this because I own a bunch of it. And then and Pepe Coin, everybody talks about how great that is. But as far as like a lot of them, and there's a lot of things going on, even like Tucker Carlson, which is one of my favorite ones. Even all those meme coins, just remember that it is still gambling. And there's going to be like one, maybe two that surfaces, and the rest will die out. I will remind you, of course, of the NFT craze that just happened not too long ago. How many of those are actually around? How many people spent 20, 30, 1,000 ETH for one stupid picture that is now worth zero? So just be careful.
Do you ever think it sort of speaks to how little utility there is when like meme coins make up so many of the top 20, 30 things? Like it's one of those things where like it's cool and it's fun and it's people sort of laugh, but I'm also like, gosh, like, is there really just, you have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, you have a few other projects in the top 10 that are in the top 20 that are doing things and doing good things, I think. But to see those meme coins and it's not even just Doge, right? I mean, there's a lot of meme coins that have sort of migrated up the ranks through the years. And I'm just like, does that speak to the how few projects there are actually providing real utility in the crypto space?
That's a Guy question. Since Guy and his team do such a great job at all these altcoins, what do you think?
That's definitely something I think in my darker moments. You think, wow. Like, I mean, SHIB is a good example. Sure. Like, SHIB is a meme coin, but they're also doing, they're also apparently building this whole DeFi ecosystem as well. And they keep launching sort of new coins that are sort of dog themed in nature. So things like Bone and Leash and all that sort of stuff. And I do kind of look at that and think, oh my God, like this is insane. And SHIB's market cap is not much lower than that of Doge's. It's right up there. And Pepe is like almost top 30 now. Pepe is still putting in new all-time highs. I must say, I think of all of them, like Pepe is the sort of strongest actual meme. Like I think that in terms of like the most recognizable, which perhaps explains that. But yeah, definitely in a lot of moments, you sort of think, wow, okay, there are all these cool projects that we know of out there, doing decentralized computing or decentralized Wi-Fi or promising to do all these things, and then actually their market caps are a fraction of something called Shiba Inu, and you're just
I feel like it's got to be discouraging for developers. Like I would be like, if I were a developer in the crypto space and I were working really hard to make something provide real world utility and I thought it was going to be a good thing, and I'm just watching all these meme coins outperform. I mean, it would be very discouraging, and I feel like it probably explains all the surge in meme coins, because all the developers trying to work on useful projects, they probably just get exhausted doing it. And they're like, well, why don't I just create my own meme coin? And then now you have like thousands of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then having said all that, and what has utility and whatnot, I've been paying attention to the markets as we've been talking. You know that Ethereum's almost down 4% over the last hour. Everything's down across the board. So maybe how like a couple of days ago we saw like a big shift in the price of Ethereum, and I said, hey, somebody knows something, and then we take a look at what happened. Now all of a sudden, I don't know if this is a buy the rumor, sell the news, but I will tell you, maybe Bitcoin dominance goes up.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir, man. I don't. I that's my base case, but the market is the market's been crazy the last few days, so I don't. It's really hard to say what these. I will say this: I tip my hat to the degens because they've been way stronger than I ever thought they were going to be. So I tip my hat to them.
Thank you.
Wow. Well, I mean, it could all just turn, couldn't it? Maybe we get bad news about the ETF. Maybe sentiment sours again. Bitcoin dominance goes right back up. Ben's next video is from the roof of his house as he's just letting rounds off into the air as dominance sort of climbs above 60%. It could all be very different this time next week. Just a couple more questions, and then we'll end
that's
it.
That's why I said ask me these questions next week. After we see what happens today.
Exactly.
I'll keep these questions on ice till next week. We can always revisit them as an exercise in showing just how quickly things change. Harris is asking, Rob, do you have any running bets regarding ETF approval? The last one went pretty well for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I'm going to keep saying that every ETF that comes out, I'm going to say it's never going to be approved. That way I don't jinx it and they actually get approved and everybody's happy. And I'm willing to fall on that grenade. No problem.
Yeah.
Did you guys see the NVIDIA? I mean, I know, I feel like a lot of you in the crypto space are at least loosely aware of it, what NVIDIA has been doing. I mean, it's over 1,000 a share.
Yeah, and 10-to-1 stock split. I think you tweeted.
Yeah, 10-to-1 stock split. So I guess the Bears were right. It's going to go back to 100. So no, I mean, I thought it was it was sort of I did this thing before. I'm like, well, if NVIDIA stock goes up, then the wealth effect takes place. Inflation is stickier. The Fed's higher for longer. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin dominance is going higher, right? But no, I mean, it's an incredible move. And what's crazy is that it really does seem to just be kind of like sucking liquidity out from like all these other places that, there's a lot of stocks that are down today, but NVIDIA's up 8 to 9%.
Maybe that's the hot commodity. That's where everybody's going to, which makes sense. I mean, it's up massively.
I think the real thing we should have been talking about for the last 3 years was NVIDIA dominance.
Yeah.
It's up more than Bitcoin.
Yeah. What's the market cap for NVIDIA? I want to say it's over 2.3 trillion, I think.
Yeah, I know it looks like 2.528 trillion. According to let me show this because this is really interesting.
What's the market cap of the entire crypto space? 2.7. So
there's the do you guys see my screen?
Yep, 2.5 trillion.
Yeah, I mean, it's you essentially have it up there with actually, let me show you guys this one because this one also includes like cryptocurrencies. So you have gold at 15.9 trillion. You have Microsoft and Apple, and then you have NVIDIA at 2.5. Wow. And then you have Bitcoin all the way down here at 1.355 trillion. I mean, Bitcoin's, it's been right around where silver is for a while. And then you should have Ethereum on here, but it's quite a bit further down at, 458 billion. But yeah, NVIDIA is getting absolutely huge right now in terms of market cap.
Oh, and my gold isn't doing so good.
Yeah, gold is not. Gold's up a lot though over the last few months.
Great.
Well, I mean, it's up a lot for gold, right? I mean, in the cryptoverse Tuesday, right? But it's up a lot for gold.
Yeah, I own gold and silver. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I do too.
I tell you what, I'm bullish on is energy stocks because someone, we're going to have to get the power to run all these NVIDIA chips. Doesn't the latest NVIDIA chip use the same electricity as an American home or something like that? And then obviously there's Bitcoin mining as well. we got to get this power from somewhere. That's maybe energy stocks are what we should be, where the long-term gains are going to be.
So Guy, you're saying that we need to ban NVIDIA chips because it takes too much electricity? I'm with you. I got you.
Yeah, I'll just recycle that old anti-Bitcoin argument this time for NVIDIA chips. No, I don't think there's going to be any stopping that. Okay, but there is going to be some stopping of this stream because I think we all have things to do, places to go, people to see. But thank you everyone for watching. We will be back, I believe, next week when who knows? As I said, the sentiment could have completely changed, and everything suddenly looks different. Maybe it looks worse. Maybe it looks even better. Maybe we're all rich. Maybe we're not. But Rob, Ben, thank you for joining today. Thanks for all your insights, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
See you next week, guys.
Awesome. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you again soon.